Hey folks, my name is Brian Weaver. I'm a VP of Sales here at NSA, and this is our number 77 in our professional services webinar series. This one is with our partner Expertek, and this particular one is on e-commerce. It's called Marketplace e-commerce, and it is a B2C e-com solution. So it's fairly easy to set up and implement. So I'm really thrilled to have with us today Ken Mostello and Andrew Mostello, and they're going to take us through the webinar today. So with that, gentlemen, I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. I'm Ken Mostello. I'm the president and co-founder of Expertek Systems, and we are going to take you through a solution we have today for the e-commerce marketplaces. And by that, I mean the Amazons, eBays, Walmart.coms of the world. We're going to show you, I think, a solution that can solve a number of business issues, help to improve sales, open up new sales channels, and move more product. So I'm going to turn this over to Andrew. Andrew is our CTO, and he's going to take us through a short PowerPoint and then actually do a product demonstration for you to show you what we have. So I'll hand off to you, Andrew, and thanks for joining, folks.
Great. Thanks, Ken. So we're here today to talk about how you can leverage and access new sales channels through what we call sales aggregators using on the e-commerce marketplaces and the platform products. And I'm going to walk through the definition of all that, but just at the outset, I wanted to describe what we're looking at. So I like to start this this discussion off with the slide that I'm sure you've seen before, but I think actually is not particularly helpful, which is the idea that e-commerce is big, right? Like, I think at this point in in the year 2025, we're all pretty familiar with the fact that people buy things online and they do it regularly, and it's a big opportunity. The real question, though, and the thing that we hear from most people is, how does this apply to me, right? How does this matter to my business? We've been working with e-commerce products and developing e-commerce solutions for CSD and SX.e for over 20 years at Expertek. And at this point, I think we have a pretty good idea about how you can leverage this stuff. And it applies to almost every distributor, right? You don't need to be a distributor focused specifically on building out a big e-commerce business. But instead, there are what I think of as a ladder of options, right? There's a broad spectrum of opportunities available to you, and there's a good fit, I think, along this continuum for almost every distributor. And this is really what I want to talk about, right? So at the bottom and at the bottom left of this distribution, we have like what I think of as lower cost and lower initial investment opportunities. And this is the B2C marketplaces that you're familiar with, right? So selling on Amazon, selling on eBay, selling on Walmart Marketplace, but also more niche products, right? Etsy, Overstock, Wayfair, Newegg, etc. This all exists. I think if you're, again, I'm assuming almost everyone on this phone call has bought something off of Amazon at one point in time, often from a third-party vendor, right? So we know it exists from a consumer perspective. But instead, I think as distributors, what we're most focused on and what we hear about, what we hear when we hear the word e-commerce is the top right, which are the high cost, high investment, initial investment platforms. So building your own custom web B2B e-commerce website, whether that's with Adobe Commerce, now Magento, which we have an integration with as well, or any other product that's out there, right? And the range here is well defined by how much it costs to get up and going versus the depth of opportunity and experience. So in the top right, we're most familiar with that, I think, because it's deep B2B, which is everything a distributor and the CSD base is comfortable with, right? That's how most of us do business today. That's how most of our clients do business, right, with other businesses. That's the bread and butter of the market we're used to. And it requires like a lot of machinery. So we've had an integration with Magento, which is a best-in-class B2B e-commerce platform for the last 8 years. And I can tell you, it's a great opportunity, right? You can build all kinds of deep integration with your business system with those products. So we have, ERP-driven pricing, ERP-driven portal opportunities to view order history and retrieve invoices, right? All kinds of deep features that require you to build a whole website to do that, right? So there's a lot of upfront time spent on building a brand, building a store, spending money on marketing and other related promotional materials to try to bring your customer base onto this, relatively large investment that you've made. It's a great opportunity. Like I said, we have a number of clients that have done this, but it's a big investment. It takes time, and there's a longer time frame to get a return on that initial investment spend, right? And so instead, I think over time, and what we've been pitching here, and what I really would like people to consider is there's opportunity outside that pure, B2B space, right? If you instead want to dip your toes into e-commerce, find new sales opportunities without a big upfront initial investment, the e-commerce platforms and the B2C marketplaces in particular are a great way to do that. And this is what I'm really going to pitch, right? So the platforms here, when I say big e-commerce platform, what I mean are the not build your custom and host your own website kind of places, right? This is your BigCommerce, your Shopify's, your WooCommerce, those sorts of solutions that allow you to register an account, customize a website as much as you'd like, and be up and running very quickly, but it's still your own website. So you have to drive traffic to it through marketing and other promotional materials. And the marketplaces, which are things set up that customers already go to, and that you're really just adding inventory and making it available for purchase on someone else's platform. Again, as you descend down to the bottom left there, the speed and the cost involved in getting set up goes way down. And so the question is how you can make that useful, right? So like I'm saying here, those offer a tremendous return on investment, right? And this is my big pitch. I want to make everyone understand you can benefit from selling on e-commerce marketplaces, even though it may not be obvious at the outset. And the way I always try to say this at first is, do you have any dead stock, right? Almost everyone has at least some amount sitting around that they'd like to get sold and out the door. And the marketplaces are a great way to make sure that's like an outlet, right? If you have stuff sitting on your shelves that you don't want to retain anymore, you want to sell, there's an outlet waiting for you to do that, right? And in addition to that, I think almost everyone has at least a few products, and in often cases more than a few, that are a pretty good fit for direct-to-consumer sales. Often they're things where you have a good vendor relationship that some random seller who's posting stuff on Amazon can't really compete with. And I have some case studies toward the end of this presentation that we can discuss that. Also, like if you're not a national distributor, there are other geographies that you can reach with those products that you wouldn't be able to locally. And the costs to getting all that running and keeping it running are low, right? You don't need a full-time e-commerce manager to manage building, rolling out that store. You can have someone that does that part-time, and it's really just setting it up. And then, every now and then keeping an eye on the order flow coming in through an automated solution, a well-integrated automated solution. So the level of benefit and cost, it's well matched, right? It's, if you're doing well, you can invest more money into it, get more proactive management of those listings, and spend more to match the revenue you're coming in versus a big B2B website where you're spending a lot of money up front and then hoping to make it back by driving traffic. So it's well matched to your costs. Part of keeping that cost reasonable is taking advantage of what at Expertek, what we call these aggregators. And I'm sure there's like an official term out there for it, but there's a number of companies that do this. There are a number of companies that do this. One of the oldest and probably the biggest and with the largest number of features that I'm aware of is now called Rhythm. It was previously called Channel Advisor. we wrote an integration to Rhythm for CSD and SX.e 7-ish years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and have been running that since. And what they allow you to do is post all your listings to one site, their dashboard in Rhythm or Channel Advisor, and then they in turn integrate with whatever e-commerce marketplace you would like to tie into. Amazon, eBay, Walmart, etc., as I mentioned earlier, or those platform e-commerce solutions, BigCommerce, Shopify, etc. And gives you one place to centrally manage the products that are listed on those sites, as well as the order volume and the order fulfillment process. So these sites pick up in their dashboard the orders coming in from these various sales channels, and they manage the inventory going out to those sales channels, as well as the shipment updates and things of that nature. So you don't have to log into eBay, Amazon, etc. to manage this stuff. You can do it from one dashboard. We had a great run. We've had a lot of clients that have been successful in running Channel Advisor. We love that product. It's just it's more expensive. So in the interest of finding a way to make this, again, lower upfront initial investment. We've now been working with Listing Mirror for the last couple of years. We built we were introduced to them by a client of ours, and we built an integration with Listing Mirror, and they offer a very similar experience. Maybe not all the bells and whistles, but pretty close, frankly, for a much lower cost, which is great. So it's even easier to get set up and running, and the bar to cover for that ongoing investment is much lower. So I'm going to demonstrate to you Listing Mirror today as part of our demonstration. But again, these things have they really scale really well because you're working in one dashboard and you're able to add channels at will. This is the best way, we think, of integrating with any of these marketplaces. Let's say you're a distributor that wants to try out integrating with Amazon, right? I mean, this occasionally has come up when we're at TUG or other conferences. Do you have an integration to Amazon? And what I'll always say is, we don't have an integration specifically with Amazon. We have an integration with Listing Mirror. And I would encourage you to look at doing one of those products, because if you're successful on Amazon, you're not going to want to get locked into it, right? You're going to want to have the opportunity to sell your products where you want, right? Where you think the customers will be. Another case study that I'll talk about later, they have products that sell well on Amazon, but also on eBay Motors, right? Which is more niche. But you wouldn't want to lock out one from the other. And instead, these aggregators make it easy to spread your workload across those channels and manage all of them efficiently. And that's really great, right? And if you're having success and you like with the marketplaces and you do want to then build your own market storefront, like with a Shopify or whatever on one of the platforms, you can then lay that in later. Again, increasing that ongoing, cost, right? But to match the opportunity. If you think there's opportunity in that, you can get one of the marketplace products, one of the platform products, and tie it into Listing Mirror, and you're already managing it, right? So this becomes a way of scaling up over time as you're seeing success in these businesses. And I think that's really great. It's one point of integration with CSD, and I can't stress this enough. As a system integrators, keeping this stuff manageable for you guys, and not making the integration a big part of your thought every day, right? Your thought should be e-commerce and sales, and your business, not the software. And so by having one point of integration through which everything flows, right, from the ERP up to Listing Mirror, and then Listing Mirror out to the channels into Listing Mirror down to CSD, keeps everything straightforward. It makes it easier to troubleshoot this stuff, and it allows you to lay in new channels at a manageable cost. And I'm going to demonstrate this. All right, our integration, the solution here, some highlights. This covers everything you would expect, the whole order and fulfillment process. So Listing Mirror will receive orders from the marketplaces. Our integration will pull them down using a rule-based system that go over, a highly configurable rule system that allows you to assign them a customer, warehouse, etc. We have support for interesting stuff. If you want to pull in catalog products, non-stocks, etc., we can handle all of that. I've actually been surprised how many of our clients, I never thought that catalog products would be a big part of this, but we've had a number of clients that have come to us, including some where I think the majority of what they sell are catalog drop ships, and do a high order volume with that as well. And then the fulfillment side of things. So as the order proceeds through your normal process, having it fulfilled and shipped out, we then if it ships in the ERP, we then push the shipments up to the aggregator, and that goes out to the marketplaces as well. So that's fully automated through the whole life cycle, right? That includes back order handling. We ran into this many years ago in all of its complexities. I'm not going to touch on a ton of that. Just know that it's a durable solution for handling order splitting in the ERP system and coming from different places and incremental shipping updates, right? We handle that. We can handle that. We've seen it all before. So that's the full order and fulfillment cycle. On the product side, we handle the main thing you care about, which is inventory levels. The marketplaces generally don't want you to be doing long back order processes. They expect stuff to ship quickly from the time it's ordered. But if you want to make sure you're able to keep that up, right, and not if you want to avoid back orders, the way these things are all built, you maintain an inventory level in Listing Mirror, etc. And when you cross a threshold, it will automatically delist that, so you don't end up selling into a back order territory. And that's all manageable in those platforms, and we keep that inventory level fresh. So by updating the aggregator with the inventory level you have in stock, and you can configure this to however you'd like, based on what warehouse selection, etc. We're able to keep that number up to date, and then Listing Mirror or Rhythm can handle that accordingly. And we've also seen a lot of clients push other product data up, especially stuff that changes like costs. It's pretty common to manage the price that things are sold. So for example, the reserve level on eBay, or the sell it now level, or the pricing Amazon Marketplace through the dashboard. But you want your own costs, standard costs, et cetera, to help inform that process, right? So it's pretty normal to do that. You can also push other things like certain customer pricing, et cetera, up to the dashboard if you would like that to drive that process as well. So we have clients pushing various level of product data. Again, it's typically stuff that's automated, the big one being inventory counts. One thing I didn't mention here, this also covers third-party fulfillments, so fulfilled by Amazon, or if you have another 3PL for shipping and managing inventory. Again, we've seen all that. Almost every client does some amount of that if they reach a certain scale. And there's ways of handling all of that using, typically what we would recommend is using a virtual warehouse. We have stuff to automatically ship those orders when they come in so that they're all reflected automatically, et cetera. And then tendering too, right? Things you'd expect. The big thing with our integrations, and this is true of almost all of our integrations these days, of our various products, is that we have a high level of customization. So every client wants to do this slightly differently, right? You all have your own business practices that are well suited to your organization, and we need to be able to support all of that. And we want to do that at low cost to you guys, right? Making sure that it's feasible to customize this as extensively as you need without being a huge custom software development project. So all of our software is built with a configuration layer using what today we call our pipeline technology, which is a configured system for managing API calls back to the ERP system. So during an implementation, the initial setup on our standard software is very quick. And then we drop in a default configuration that we can then extensively customize as you would like, or not, if you want to keep it straightforward and low cost to get set up. So that's a big differentiator for us with our integrations. We try to make this stuff configurable to how you want to do it. Small example, that client I mentioned earlier that's doing a lot of catalog products and drop ships, they want the POs, the direct to order POs for those lines to automatically get created when the orders come in. So we have for them, we have a special process that when the order goes in, we then do some service interface calls to the CSD to go ahead and create those direct PO lines for those drop ships, right, automatically. So a high level of automation can be configured as you would see fit. And we can take that to a pretty serious degree, right? If you have other systems that you want us to mess with and tie into, that's all possible. Okay, so 2 case studies. We have one client actually that it's this Northeast auto shop distributor. They're near us here in the Northeast. During the pandemic, they had a bunch of nitrile gloves back when those were scarce. And they started selling them on eBay and Amazon using Rhythm and our integration. And we went from a 0 business to gradually having enough business that they hired an e-commerce manager. And now they do over 1,000 orders a month. They started white labeling products that they source and selling those under their own brand name. And then they're moving to Listing Mirror now to save money as well. So
Yes.
It's become a big business for them.
And I would just add in that it's also allowed them not to be geographically bound the way they were. I mean, this is a company that historically sent salespeople. Yeah, they still have them, outside salespeople on the road, collect orders, and then they would deliver product by truck. Now they are selling nationally. Not all the products they have, but a good number of them because they're doing e-commerce.
Yeah. Likewise, we had another business. So that's one example, right? Of somebody that had a 0 e-commerce business. They were a traditional distributor, client of ours for a long time, over a decade, well over a decade. And they dipped their toe into e-commerce. They saw an opportunity and gradually have grown that into quite a substantial business. And then another client example, this Northeast Marine Parts distributor, they, on the other hand, have been, they were a traditional distributor, and then the next generation of the family business took over about, I think, 20 years ago and started selling on eBay Motors, right? They had a huge catalog of internally on a huge stock of these tail-cased marine parts. And they started posting them on eBay Motors and Amazon Marketplace and doing quite a bit of sales. So just a huge number of SKUs they have, and selling all over the world. They were doing it with a different ERP system, and they ended up buying CSD SX.e because of the integration. Being able to have a fully integrated solution for them, they couldn't keep up with the manual processes, and having a fully integrated solution made SX.e worthwhile to them. So they have TWL, and it's now effectively a fully automated business. I mean, the orders come in. There's one employee who spends most of his time in Channel Advisor Rhythm, doing sales and managing sales there in the front office. And then the orders come in, they drop to CSD through the integration down to TWL, and kind of the first time somebody touches the order, it's in the warehouse getting packed. So it's a big e-commerce business, small number of employees, but huge number of SKUs, customer data, and during peak season, right, 6,000 plus orders a month. So yeah, it's really a huge e-commerce business. All right, and I'll jump over and start doing a demo. Unless, Ken, do you have any other comments before I click over to a demo?
No, I'm all set.
Great. All right, so let me close my CloudSweep distribution here. So let's take you first to take a look at Listing Mirror itself. So this is Listing Mirror. This is that dashboard I was talking about. This is our demo account, which is why the sales are so anemic. It's all pure testing and demonstrations. But you can see here, this is the dashboard you would see for the activity that you have connected into Listing Mirror, into the aggregator. There's a page here for listings. These are all the various products that you have listed out on the marketplaces. And if you click on any one of these, you can see I have very little information set up, but you can set up quite rich data that then goes out to describe these products in the various places they're listed, including images, other sorts of information and details, etc. Right? This is that attribute information, the e-commerce information you would expect to see on a website. There's also other rules here about pricing. I've kept this pretty simple, again, for demonstration purposes, but lots of options and things you can configure in here. And then we have the order dashboard, which is really where we're going to spend our time. So you can see this is my order history for various orders. If you view one of these in Listing Mirror, you'll see there's just some basic information, who it was, what they purchased, etc. For orders that have already shipped, right? You can see it's in the filled stage now. You can see how it was fulfilled, etc. Right? So we're going to run through one of these processes. I entered this order before the phone call earlier today in here. I entered it directly into Listing Mirror for demonstration purposes. Typically, what you would see, of course, is that this was imported from a sales channel somewhere, like an Amazon or an eBay, etc., right? Or BigCommerce. I'm faking this out as an Amazon order for the purposes of demonstration. So in Cloud Suite now, if we come back here, you can see that in our menu, we have a Listing Mirror section. This is an extension that we've added to a set of extensions that we've added to CSD for the purpose of managing this integration. The Listing Mirror integration is part of our broader e-commerce module, which includes a whole bunch of things, some administration options, a set of types and values, integration data that you can manage, right? We're trying to set up a situation where you can self-manage this process as much as possible, including some push information, right? That's how the products work. But if I go into the Listing Mirror specific flavor of this, this is I can click on the imported orders screen and get to my dashboard. This is the e-commerce dashboard, right? Where if you have an e-commerce manager or someone who's managing this, this is where they would come to look at the order flow. That's the idea. I paused the importer earlier so that I could hit this button now to go and fetch the new orders out of Listing Mirror, and you could see this. So I hit the pull button, which goes and pulls anything that's fresh and waiting to come down out of Listing Mirror. I did that, and you can see it created a new record here, showing that it's in the importing stage because it came in, and it's now going through the import process. If I click through that order, you can see that we have an event log on this. Again, the point of all of this is to provide a place in the ERP system where you can have visibility into the integration process, right? If there's an order that didn't go through, if there were an error, right? Like you saw down here earlier, I had this template error. Those errors are clearly marked. You can click through and look at the error and look at the data and contact us if there's a problem that you can't fix. And it allows us to keep track of everything, right, with visibility. We're not trying to hide anything, and this is a place to see it. So you can see the order here. You can see the event log. We'll come back to that in a moment. In this case, it was successfully imported. The order number is now 3855. I can see how it was converted, right? So we have the option of using cross-references and posting different SKUs into Listing Mirror than the ones that we have in CSD. CSD is really good about having product cross-references. So we take advantage of all of that and allow you to use that here as you see fit to map things, including different units of measure. I can look at the raw data on my order. This is the raw data that came out of Listing Mirror, again, for debugging, troubleshooting purposes, also for order history and retention and auditing. And I can look at what we call here the pipeline job. The pipeline job, as I mentioned earlier, this is part of that configurable process for order importing. This is the actual log of the import process for this order. It went through 3 steps in our case here. What we call the builder step in this case for this configuration, which takes the raw order data and it goes and pulls the data out of CSD to construct this order. It then goes into the import process, right, which actually pulls that order in to CSD. And finally, we have a post-import phase here, which is just going to be kicking off any other processes and reporting back the order number that was successful. The configuration of all of this, again, is set up specific to this company and this tenant, and that can be configured as we see fit. What we've done here is basically our vanilla install, what we usually drop in at the outset of an implementation project as kind of the starting point for clients to customize, right? Because it's pretty straightforward. Most of the time, what you want to do is pretty simple, right? With little changes around the edges. If I click over to my order here, I can see how it came in. So we're applying an origin code here as part of that configuration to identify this was a listing mirror order. It's typical for clients to do one of a couple things. We'll often see that they'll have separate customers for each marketplace. Like this is my Amazon customer, this is my eBay customer, or you can have different origin codes, right? This is my Amazon origin code, and I'm using just a web default customer or something. In this case, we have because again, it's demonstration on our generic install here in our tenant. We have a listing mirror origin code, and we're just putting it into a default customer, right? You can also do stuff like attempt to locate based on the email address or whatever, a customer in your system, assign it to them, etc. Some of that, it depends on, and we'll talk you through all this as part of implementation, or our friends at NSA would talk you through it as part of implementation, right? Like, what are your objectives? Do you need to keep all of that? This is really a somewhat B2C solution. So if you don't need to keep track of all that, it's much simpler to just have a generic customer. But if you do want that, we can handle all that, right? And we have customers that do it both ways. This was assigned to ship via, etc. Nothing too exciting here, right? This was the marketplace identifier ID that we saw on the order, right? We're happening to put that in that field with this config. Again, that's specific to this. And if I look at my lines, it's what you'd expect, right? We imported the right thing here. Okay, right? So it's an order in CSD. Everybody's pretty familiar with that. So now what I'm going to do is actually show the fulfillment of that live as well. So I'm going to go over and ship this. I'm going to do it in Starship just because it's fast. We have an integration with Starship. I'm not talking through that in any serious way today. Oh, hold on, I got to log in. But this is the fastest way to actually get this shipped with the tracking number, even if it's a stub tracking number. I can just click a button a couple times and it'll go through. But any shipping solution is acceptable as long as it writes back to the ERP system, because everything here is flowing through the ERP, which it should be anyway. That's the system of record. I'm going to ship this UPS. It's going to get a generic tracking number. If I look at my packages, so my order is now shipped. If I look at my packages, I have this tracking number on it. And if I look at listing mirror, I'll see here that in a moment, as the process kicks over, this will move to shipped, right? What's happening? How does this work? We're taking advantage of Infor's Ion technology. We have certain document flows in here that allow us to, data flows, now they're called, that allow us to listen for orders that are getting shipped, shipping events, right? If I look in here for listing mirror, this will look familiar to many people, right? We're taking a document out of CSD, we're tapping into that, and that's what's triggering the shipping process. So this is not polling based, right? It's dynamic using the tools that Infor has provided. And we're also debouncing that. So we're putting that into a buffer. That's why I go and show that site while I wait for the minute for this thing to kick over. So you can see that the process, and if we were to look at one view and we could step through all that, I won't do that in the interest of time unless someone asks. But that shipment notification calls one of our APIs using that document flow. And that in turn goes to trigger one of our pipelines to handle the order shipment. That's what that is here. And just to show, I mentioned earlier, we're doing that incremental fulfillment process that's really important for backorder durability. And you can see here, that's what this looks like, right? So we're retrieving the contents of the packages out of CSD. How do you do that? You look at the order suffixes, you grab the package records, and if you have TWL, you can be even more precise than that by tying it back through the PICs and everything. But in this case, we're just grabbing the package and saying these are the orders on that order suffix that shipped. And then we take that and we run it through a matching process against the original quantities ordered. Why do you do that? Because, things can happen in CSD that you don't anticipate in the integration. So for example, if you ship a substitute, if you ship a different unit of measure, right? You have to be able to tie all this back to what originally was ordered. And that's what we're doing here. So we're doing this matching process to identify the lines that shipped. We do that, assign the tracking number to that, and then we go ahead, we figure out the carrier based on the mapping records in the integration, and then we go ahead and actually ship this, right? And that's the call out to listing mirror here. That's what's going on there. And then we finally write it back to the integration. Said, this is what happened, take a look. And that's what you're now seeing here. So this stage event, I just very briefly, to give you a flavor of it without taking forever, step through like what's happening behind the scenes. And again, you can see this in real time as it updates through the integration. And that's why we have this e-commerce module. CSD does a lot of things really well. One of the things it doesn't really have is a way for you to manage external order processes. And that's what our e-commerce module and the listing mirror dashboard here is really built for. It's built for that and finding exceptions, error orders that have gone to error and things of that nature, and triaging that and managing those mappings, right? So if you add a new ship via and you want to change the mapping to the carrier inside of listing mirror, being able to do that yourself, right? That kind of thing. Okay, that's one thing. So that's the order fulfillment process. If we come back into the dashboard now, you'll see that that order is fulfilled, right? Because we shipped it. This was the tracking number you saw earlier. So that's everything that you would expect, right? That's how it works. In the meantime, our inventory levels, because we ordered something, has changed as well. So this is now 1170. I didn't show you earlier when we started, but if we check ICIA, you'll see the same thing, right? 1170. And that's because every time the level here changes, the inventory level changes, we have a process set up in Ion as well to look for product changes, receive those, queue them up in a push queue, like I showed earlier on the menu, and then go ahead and update listing mirror with those inventory level changes. So same thing as well. I could go through and show you the pipeline behind all that. It's set up here as well. It's all visible for that process, right? I'm not going to go too deep into this, but just to give a flavor, if you look at listing mirror here, right, there's everything for the, the inventory updates, right? All right, perfect. So that is the basics overall of the integration. We've to cover, right, to review what we covered. We're handling the order fulfillment process. So, orders getting imported into the system in a way that's configurable, traceable, auditable, and manageable. We're then handling the fulfillment process, where as those orders and those suffixes ship, we are tuning into that, keying into that, and then turning around and updating listing mirror with that information as they ship. Likewise, as products change in the system, whether it's inventory level, cost, or anything else you feel like tying into, we keep an eye on that, and then we queue those up and push them out in bulk as well. And thus we keep listing mirror synced with the events taking place in CSD, and we keep CSD synced with the orders coming in from the remote systems. Listing mirror, in turn, if this were plugged into Amazon, eBay, etc., would be updating those systems on a regular basis using these changes here. You'll see these negatives, by the way. I know it's like a little alarming when I'm looking at it. That's because these are non-stocks. So we're not pushing a level out here. We're just having it ignore. So that's fine. But that's what you're seeing. On a side note, this is a typical thing that comes up. I don't usually call this out, but since we're looking at it, and this has come up in almost every conversation I've had lately. If you're selling a product, it's often common to want to sell different packages, different sizes, different units of measure of those on these marketplaces. So in this case, it's a single tool. In this case, it's a pack of 5. And the way those sites all handle that is with separate SKUs. And what we usually have people do is tie those in using cross references. So this Compark 002 5-pack is set up as a cross reference in our system with a unit of measure. And so we handle that on the import by effectively it's a fixed SKU with a separate unit of measure than the typical selling or stocking unit of measure in CSD. So this is a very like normal way of dealing with this. If you have e-commerce people, if you're already doing this, or if you've thought about it, this is probably something you've run into at some point already. That's how we usually recommend people do this, using cross references. Okay, so that is my general overview of this. Ken, did you have any notes you wanted to add here at the end? I can mention the special on the website real quick. I'll pull that up.
Sure. Yeah, why don't you do that?
All right, great. So on the webinar series page here today, on our friends NSA's website, you'll notice that we have a special offer. We're offering a 30% discount on essential subscriptions for Listing Mirror. Listing Mirror is an integrated solution that we're a partner of theirs. So it's, we sell it ourselves. So you can work through us and we directly work with them. It makes it much easier and straightforward for people to buy this. And it all allows us to offer discounts as we work with Listing Mirror and handling all that. And that offer is good through November 15th. And it's also a 25% off implementation services.
Right.
So there's a good offer out there if you want to try it.
Yeah, and I'll just add, the product is very reasonably priced to begin with. So it's really a good deal if you think you want to, take a step into the direction of marketplace e-commerce. There's not a lot to lose by going here.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, the original starting pitch on all this is true, right? This is a relatively low cost initial investment opportunity to try out this stuff, right? I think it's a pretty safe way to get started in e-commerce and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I'll add something else too. Normally our contracts are always a standard 3-year commitment, but if somebody wants to try it for a year and have the option of canceling, we would certainly consider that as well. We want you to be happy.
Yeah. One other success story we didn't mention here, the client that introduced us to Listing Mirror. I mean, they started off this way. They had some dead stock. They listed it on, I believe it was Amazon, and they did enough sales that they started expanding that business. And now, I mean, they're doing $9,000 orders a month. I think they're one of our larger marketplace clients, and it's entirely possible that happened in a period of something like five-ish years, right? So there is real opportunity there.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrific. Andrew and Ken, thank you so much for the presentation and the demo as well. There are a number of questions we have, but while we're on the special offer page, if you guys could just kind of give a rough idea as to what the range of the software, which I know is a combination of the Expertek integration with SX.e or CSD and Listing Mirror, along with the vanilla install, just to kind of give people a rough idea as to what they might be looking at, all in, and then maybe also how long that implementation typically might take.
Yeah, sure. The entry level price is $12.50 a month, but again, you get 30% off of that, and that includes Listing Mirror. So it's one subscription price. And as far as implementation, I think there's good news on that. These don't take terribly long. I mean, they can be as little as 1 week of services.
Hey, terrific. I appreciate that. And we do actually have a number of questions, which is exciting. So let me go to a number of those here. So one question we have is, does the integration work with SX.e 10.3 GUI? Maybe if you could cover off what versions of SX.e it works with in addition to Cloud Suite, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we don't have an integration to GUI today, I believe, Andrew. Is that correct?
No,
No, we
not
can do
really.
GUI.
No, we do actually. As I'm in the middle of a rhythm integration with
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
6 GUI. Yes, it does work. You don't have the lovely extensions to view here, right? This panel is not part of that. We don't have like a custom GUI menu items. But well, we do have API adapter services that we deploy on premise that allow us to plug our integration into older versions of SXE, like 10. For 11, you already have all the same APIs, so if you're on Web 11, it's equivalent to this, right? There's no difference. But if you're on like 10 GUI, we deploy our API services, and then we plug into that. There's a bit more implementation going on with that because there's more complexity, but it does work. Instead of having this dashboard, what we'll usually do, or often people who have the dashboard request this anyway, the pipelines I showed you earlier, if there's like an error or something in the import process, we'll send out an email alert, or we use Slack internally. So, a Slack notification if you'd prefer seeing messages that way, right? Something that allows you to use the solution without having this management interface. Um, if you're contemplating at some point going on to like Web 11 or CSD, I think it's a great time to make that pitch, right? Like it's nice to have all this stuff. It's much easier, more cost effective to build user interface for the web product than it is for GUI. But yeah, we support it. Like I said, the implementation is a bit more complex, so so there's more labor there. And usually there's mods. Usually you have mods already if you're on-prem. Most clients on-prem are modded, so sometimes we have to do custom config to work around that. But yeah, it does work.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Another couple of questions we have. How do you collect payments through Listing Mirror, and what method of payment do you accept?
That's great. So Listing Mirror is reflecting the payment collected by the marketplaces. So when you buy something on Amazon, you are paying Amazon, and then Amazon is in turn letting Listing Mirror know that payment was collected. So the actual collection process is handled by the point of customer contact, either a marketplace or one of those e-commerce platforms. So if you have Shopify, et cetera, the method of payment is handled by Shopify, right? Whether extension that you're installing or whatever is natively integrated, right? They have their whole shop pay thing and all that jazz. So all we're doing is reflecting that payment back in the business system. So typically what we will do for clients, and this keeps everything sane, is that somebody buys something on Amazon, we don't import it into CSD until that payment has cleared, right? Because if they cancel it, you don't want to have to like deal with all of that extra work internally. So once they've payments cleared and it's ready to ship, we pull it into CSD, and we usually, if you want it automated, we pull it in tendered with a generic payment type, something that's like, this is collected by Amazon. And then later, right, you can actually manage the reconcile that by seeing what Amazon, when you get the money from Amazon, right, that passes through to you. So it's actually this is one of the reasons why it's more straightforward, because payment is being handled by a third party. So you don't have to go through the effort of like dealing with, a SendPause integration or anything like that.
Great, well, thank you. And guys, please keep the questions coming in chat. I do have a few more as well.
Okay.
What do you think are the chief advantages of your marketplace solution over just building your own web e-com store?
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm happy to speak to that if you want, Andrew.
Sure.
I'll mention a few things. First of all, building your own site is a much bigger lift. Okay. I mean, you're talking, a project to build your own e-commerce site, and we do them. I mean, we have clients certainly that use we have integration software for e-commerce sites, and that's something we do routinely deploy. And there's nothing to say you can't do both. But to speak specifically to the question of advantages, the time to get to market with this solution on the marketplaces is much shorter than it's going to be in deploying your own. Let me also say there are other advantages too, particularly when it comes to marketing and promoting the site, right? If you have your own site, you're on your own to promote that, and you really need to think about how you're going to draw traffic to your website. If you're out on Amazon and eBay, obviously you're there, so right there you're visible, but there are also tools that all of these uh, marketplaces provide to promote your products. So, from a marketing standpoint, and from a time to market, and from a cost standpoint, and that's another big one. Uh, you can tip your toe in this and get there quite quickly. Getting up on your own platform is going to take a lot longer, and it's going to cost you more.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Ken. Thank you. A couple other questions I have. How do your clients profit with the slimmer margins that are typically common in e-commerce marketplace sales?
Yeah, we get asked that one quite a bit. And I think the answer is pretty straightforward. First of all, it's generally incremental revenue and incremental margin, right? But we do have clients like the marine distributor Andrew mentioned, where virtually all of their sales are all marketplace sales, and they make a good living. Uh, the, I think what you have to recognize when you're doing marketplace sales is your selling cost. Yes, you're paying obviously the marketplace. They're exacting a fee for what they're doing. Okay. But you have to think about what you're not paying, right? You're not paying the salesperson to book that order. You're not paying the person that goes and calls on the customer to get the order. I mean, human selling cost is very, very high. It's not inexpensive. And of course, the key really here is outsourcing the sales process to the marketplace, okay, which saves you that internal cost. And secondly, automating the process as much as you can. The marine parts distributor, I'll come back to them again. That's pretty much a lights out operation. Orders come in over the pipe, and they're a TWL user. They get dropped to the guns in TWL. The order gets picked, and it gets shipped. There's a lot of efficiency there, and they don't have salespeople they're paying either.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
great.
I would add, right? I think for almost everyone, this is a complementary business, right? This does not replace your standard, successful distribution business, right? It's an opportunity for usually a subset of your products that where it makes tactical sense to do that. And, it's adding extra leverage to your existing business to go out there and open up new sales opportunities where it makes sense. In the case of the distributor with the gloves, there are a few products they have, right? I think it's on the order of like a couple hundred SKUs, maybe. And I think it started with like 50, where he had a really solid vendor relationship that allowed him to undercut the rest of the market, and at a time, especially when those products were scarce. And even as that's rolled forward, that relationship made, makes it a sensible business. He doesn't sell everything on there, right? They're not selling like bulk oil on there or anything like that. That wouldn't make sense. But for the products where it does, especially the stuff they're white labeling now, right? There are opportunities that I'm sure everyone knows their business well enough. There are probably at least a few products tactically where this makes sense, and that's what you want to focus on. And that's why this pitch is interesting, because it's not investing a ton of money to build an e-commerce business that like displaces your normal operations. It's about finding complementary opportunities that allow you to get even more leverage out of your existing business.
Mhm.
Terrific, Andrew. Yeah, a couple more questions. And Felipe,
Yeah.
this is a good one. Thank you for this one. Whom should we reach out to continue the conversation on the subscription? Brian, Andrew, or Ken. I would invite you to contact any of us.
Yeah.
We work very closely together. Whatever's easiest to do. Maybe Andrew and Ken, you can pop up your emails as well at some point here to put that on the screen for folks. But we can certainly contact you, set up a call, whichever way you'd like to contact us. And I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that.
No, I mean, I would agree with that. Contact any of us, and we'll be right back to you.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I have one final question at this point. What are the major challenges your clients have encountered with selling on the marketplaces?
Yeah, I'll be happy to field that one too. I think it's just familiarity with working with the policies of the marketplaces. And understanding how they, what makes them tick and how they work. It is a different way to sell. Okay. And I would say, what challenges should you anticipate? Unless you are hiring someone that has specific expertise in that area, expect that there's going to be some learning curve on that. The good news is there are people that can help with that. All right. I would definitely say it's not a bad idea to retain, perhaps a consultant, to come in periodically when you're getting going on this, someone that knows the ropes on the marketplace that you're looking to get going. Now, one of the good things I think is that products like Listing Mirror, like Rhythm, actually do enforce a lot of the marketplace rules and policies, so that if Amazon wants a 100-character description and eBay only takes 80, they handle those kinds of things. So that a lot of that is baked into their products. But that's going to be your biggest challenge, I think, is just familiarity with that and getting comfortable with it. But once you do, you got a brand new channel.
Terrific. I appreciate that. So, guys, that's all the questions we have at this point. We're almost at the
Okay.
top of the hour. And I just want to mention to everybody that's joined a little bit later as well, we have recorded today's session. We'll be getting that out to everybody within 24 hours. We will also, in that email, include this promo. And I would urge you guys to take advantage of that. We appreciate the Expertek stepping up with such a tremendous appealing discount on both the subscription as well as the implementation. And we will also include the email contacts for Andrew, Ken, and myself. So we'll make sure we do
Okay.
that as well. Any final word, gents, before we wrap?
No, just thank you, Brian, and thanks to Carrie for organizing this. And we'll look forward to hearing from some of you.
You
Thank you.
bet.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, guys. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining today. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you now.
Thank you.
Bye.